What started as a routine confirmation hearing suddenly turned into one of the most emotionally charged and politically revealing moments of the day. During Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing, Senator Markwayne Mullin delivered an unscripted, deeply personal defense that went far beyond resumes and policy checklists.
Your time and do not wish to ask a question. I was misinformed. Senator Mullin,
okay.
is right.
Caught me totally off guard there. I'd like to submit for the record signatures by 32 members of the House of Representatives who are veterans. The signatures call on the Senate to honor the constitutional duty of advise and consent by conducting a fair, thorough confirmation process that evaluates his nomination solely on the substance and merits. His distinguished military service, academic credentials, and a bold vision for revitalizing the national defense. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record.
Without objection.
You know, there's a lot of talk going about talking about qualifications and then about us hiring him if we are the board. But there's a lot of senators here I wouldn't have on my board because there is no qualifications except your age, and you got to be living in the state and you're a citizen of the United States to be a senator. Other than the fact we got to convince a lot of people to vote for us. And then when we start talking about qualifications for if you're qualified for it, could the chairman tell me what the qualifications are for the Secretary of Defense? Mr. Chairman, could you tell me what the qualifications are for the Secretary of Defense?
I'd be happy
I'll read it.
for you to do that. Yeah.
Let me read it for you because I Googled
I
it.
was getting some advice from
I
my second in command.
Yeah, but I'm just making a point because there's a lot about qualifications, and I think it's so hypocritical of senators, especially on the other side of the aisle, be talking about his qualifications, not going to lead the secretary or be the Secretary of Defense, and yet your qualifications aren't any better. You guys aren't any more qualified to be the senator than I'm qualified to be the senator, except we're lucky enough to be here. But let me read you what the qualifications of the Secretary of Defense is, because I Googled it, and went through a lot of different sites, and really it's hard to see. But in general, the U.S. Secretary of Defense position is filled by a civilian. That's it. If you have served in the U.S. Army Forces and have been in the service for, you have to be retired for at least 7 years, and Congress can weigh that. And then there's questions that the senator from Massachusetts brought up about serving on a board inside the military industry, and yet your own secretary that you all voted for, Secretary Austin, we had to vote on a waiver because he stepped off the board of Raytheon. But I guess that's okay because that's a Democrat Secretary of Defense. But we so quickly forget about that. And then Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because the man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And Jennifer, thank you for loving him through that mistake. Because the only reason why I'm here and not in prison is because my wife loved me too. I have changed, but I'm not perfect. But I found somebody that thought I was perfect. And for whatever reason, you love Pete, and I don't know why. But just like our Lord and Savior forgave me, my wife's had to forgive me more than once too, and I'm sure you've had to forgive him too. And so thank you. So before I go down this rabbit hole again, tell me something about your wife that you love.
She's the smartest, most capable, loving, humble, honest person I've ever met. In addition to being incredibly beautiful.
Don't forget about your kids.
I'm supposed to talk about my kids?
No, well, she's also the mother.
Oh, an amazing mother.
Yes.
Of our blended family of 7
Brother,
kids.
I'm pulling you
which love
along.
her.
I'm trying to help you here. Do you believe that you're going to be running the Secretary or the Department of Defense by yourself?
Senator, absolutely not. Just as President Trump is assembling his cabinet, I look forward and already am in the process of building one of the best possible teams you can imagine, with decades and decades of experience outside of the Pentagon, driving innovation and excellence, and also inside the building, knowing how to make it happen. Yes, sir.
So, in your organizations that you did have the privilege of running, did you have a board that you...
In both organizations, we had a board, yes.
Okay, and what did you do with that board? What kind of decisions did you make with them?
Those boards provided oversight and insight into decision-making.
They all have special, unique sets that maybe filled gaps that you're not the expertise in?
Yes, sir.
So do you believe you're capable of surrounding yourself with capable individuals that you're going to be able to run those same ideas by, and surround yourself with people that are smarter and better equipped in maybe areas that you don't necessarily carry those expertise with?
Senator, the only reason I've had success in life, to include my wonderful wife, is because of people more capable around me and having the self-confidence to empower them and say, hey, run with the ball, run with the football, take it down the field. We'll do this together. I don't care who gets the credit. And in this case, that's how the Pentagon will be run.
Let's end with this, Mr. Chairman, about the qualifications. You got a man who has literally put his butt on the line. He served 20 years in the service, multiple deployments, has heard the bullets crack over the top of his head, has been willing to go into combat, been willing to see friends die for this country. And he's willing to still put himself through this. His wife is willing to still stand beside him, knowing he wasn't perfect, knowing that all this was going to be brought up. And he's still willing to serve the country. What other qualifications does he need? That I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Mullin. Senator Duckworth. And again, we really are going to strictly enforce the rule about no demonstrations or noise.
And to understand why this moment resonated so strongly, we need to slow it down, unpack it, and explain what was really happening beneath the surface. If you value clear, honest breakdowns like this, make sure you're subscribed now so you never miss context the headlines leave out. The exchange began unexpectedly. Senator Mullin admitted he had been caught off guard and chose not to ask a formal question. Instead, he entered into the record a letter signed by 32 House members who are veterans. That letter called on the Senate to fulfill its constitutional duty of advice and consent by conducting a fair and thorough confirmation process, one focused on substance and merit rather than political theater. This was not just paperwork, it was a signal. Veterans in Congress were stepping in to say that Pete Hegseth's military service, academic background, and vision deserved serious consideration, not character assassination. If you want more insight into how these procedural moments shape real outcomes, subscribe to the channel for in-depth coverage. From there, Mullin pivoted to what became the heart of his argument: hypocrisy. He challenged the way senators talk about qualifications as if they themselves pass some elite professional standard to earn their seats. Mullin reminded the room and the audience that the constitutional requirements to be a senator are remarkably simple. You must be a certain age, live in the state, and be a U.S. citizen. That is it. No management experience required, no military service required, no executive leadership background required. And yet, many of those same senators were aggressively questioning whether Hegseth was qualified to lead the Department of Defense. Mullin's point was uncomfortable but clear. If we are being honest about qualifications, the Senate itself is not exactly a boardroom of defense experts. If that perspective matters to you, subscribe now for more straight talk analysis. The tone then shifted from procedural to deeply personal. Mullin addressed accusations and hypotheticals raised by other senators, including references to alcohol use and personal conduct. He asked a question that no one in the room wanted to answer out loud. How many senators have shown up drunk to vote late at night? How many have personal histories involving divorce or infidelity? And how many were ever asked to resign over it? The implication was not to excuse mistakes, but to expose the double standard. Mullin argued that Washington often pretends to uphold moral purity while quietly tolerating the same flaws behind closed doors. If you want more reporting that cuts through that performative politics, make sure you subscribe. Then came the most human moment of the hearing. Mullin spoke about forgiveness. He spoke about his own mistakes, about how his wife's love changed his life, and how without that grace, he might not be standing in the Senate today. He thanked Pete Hegseth's wife for standing by him, drawing a direct line between personal redemption and public service. This was not scripted, this was raw, and it reframed the conversation from whether a man has ever failed to whether a man is allowed to grow. That distinction is critical in understanding modern confirmation battles, and if you want more moments like this explained with honesty, subscribe now. When Mullin finally turned back to governance, he asked a practical question. Do you believe you will be running the Department of Defense by yourself? Hegseth's answer was direct and grounded. No. He emphasized that leadership is about building teams, surrounding yourself with experienced professionals, and listening to people who fill the gaps in your own expertise. He compared it to how boards function in organizations he previously led, providing oversight, insight, and accountability. This was a reminder that executive leadership is not about knowing everything, about knowing how to lead people who do. If you want continued coverage that explains why these answers matter, subscribe to the channel. By the end of the exchange, this was no longer just about Pete Hegseth. It was about how Washington defines qualification, how it applies standards unevenly, and how personal failure is weaponized in political fights. It was about whether redemption is allowed in public life, and who gets the benefit of the doubt. These are questions that extend far beyond one nominee or one hearing, and we will continue to break them down for you, clearly and honestly. Subscribe now so you stay informed, not just entertained.